Good morning. The drum's going to do a warm-up song, so no need to stand for this one.
laughed that one yesterday. He said, "Do you hear me? The mic, do you hear me?"
Check, check. All we have to do is hit the translation channel and just hit accept, and then you see that come up.
Yeah, it'll come up. Okay, just press accept button.
Just
Good morning, good morning. We're going to get started.
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
Well,
At this time, I'm going to call on the drum to open our day in a good way with a song.
Oh no, that's about it.
if there's anything, just shoot me a text.
My worry was.
Okay. Keewaywin nanon. I'll stand. I said Derek's putting on his lipstick. We better get started. Hello. Okay. Helen, if you could come up and ask our elder to come and open our meeting with a prayer. Bring it this way.
Good morning, everybody. Minukusebaya. Minukusebaya. Today we have to, we sit down together again. Today is a good day. Today we have many things to talk about. Protecting ourselves, our lives, our lands, our waters, and how we are going to do it. For many years now, I've been around NAN, and for many years I have heard that talk. Saman Schnabeg and Sinwak have succeeded in little ways, but now we must proceed to the big ways. We have to show the settlers how strong we are, and how we can accomplish that we are not the people that they thought we were. We have to remember that. So in saying that, we thank the Creator for giving us this day, that we might work. We ask Him to bring our thoughts, our minds together, so that when we make a decision, we all agree together. I ask the Creator for blessings for the communities, your homes and families you have left behind to be here, that they stay safe, have their health protected, and to keep working at living your own lives, your traditional lives and practices. And I ask the Creator for direction and always for strength and guidance as we proceed. And I ask the Creator to bless our youth, that we teach them well, to bless the infants, and to remember that we are their voices. Little babies cannot talk. They cannot tell us their issues. They cry. They make noise. So we become their voices. We must address that. And I also ask the Creator blessings for the elders in the communities, that we hear what they teach. We hear what they teach us and we pass it on. And we must remember our oral tradition of passing on our history, our teachings. We teach them young, and they will remember. And lastly, I want to ask for blessings for the leadership that we have. You are all strong people, and I admire many of you. And I should not say many of you, because I admire anybody who is in a leadership position, helping our people. And keep us all in mind that as you go forward, the things that you hear, the things that you learn, and the tools that you may develop, that we may keep going. And we thank the Creator again for this day, for giving us the opportunity to develop these tools so that we remain strong. Inanak man huwag agi sigagi kavanawiyat sa manin ni maya kwek tutu tawag ito kakanawiyak. Emis na nakumanan ka sa kaso ko siya. Miwa, amen. Miigwats.
Thank you to the drum for the beautiful song, and thank you, Helen, for the reminder for today. Before we start our day's agenda, I'd like to acknowledge those communities that are hurting due to losses. And this especially hits home. I'd like to acknowledge one of the longtime employees of the NAN, Faye, who lost her daughter this weekend. So keep her in your thoughts and prayers, to lose a daughter suddenly. And the staff, because as you become a family, and when one's hurting, we all are affected. So keep Faye in your prayers. I'd also like to acknowledge Saul Mamakwa. He's somewhere in here. I saw him. Oh, there he is. Our MPP, Saul. And just a reminder to the delegates that the deadline for resolutions is 3 p.m. today. So if you have a resolution, it needs to be handed in by 3 p.m. So now we're going to get on with the agenda. So quickly, I'm just going to go over a recap of yesterday's discussion. So the day began with the drum, and then the opening prayer by our two elders, both Barney and Helen. I have a little friend here this morning, Fly. Welcoming remarks from the host chief, Chief Chad Busno from Matagami. Opening remarks from our elder, David Fletcher, the NAN Women's Council Rep. Celine Sutherland, and Representative Mallory Solomon from the Shkatsa Council. To begin the day, we went through the procedural resolutions, the acceptance of the chairpersons for the conference, the adoption of the rules and procedures, and the acceptance of the agenda. And that agenda was amended, 2 items were added. The opening address and annual report by Grand Chief Derek Fox, and the different items that he has been working on, and the comments related to the valued feedback from the delegation. The chiefs will continue to advocate for the high-quality health care for NAN people in health transformation, and the process of developing the mental health and addiction strategy that came from the mental health forum that took place 2 weeks ago. In the process of developing, strive for unity amongst executives and to move forward and recognize NAN's beauty and uniqueness. And that was the report from Grand Chief. And then we went into the presentation on the audit by Marcel Gagnon. And basically he went over the audit, and there was no questions on the audit, and we moved into the acceptance of the audit for this past fiscal year through Resolution 2211. And then there was an in-camera session, and there was 2 items, one that relates to the national issue, and the other one was the ongoing addictions issues in the communities, and that was added earlier on the agenda. And then the Ushkatsak did their presentation, as each of them have their own portfolios, so they give a presentation on what they've been doing and how they've been trying to work with the regional, the Ontario chiefs, and how they fit into the AFN Ushkatsak. And then we went into a long presentation with the housing strategy. It was an issue that kept coming up during the day. The real need to immediately address the housing issue in our communities, as it affects all aspects of life. And there was a resolution that was presented to move forward on the implementation of the NAN housing strategy. And then Deputy Grand Chief Annabette Echvanishkam provided an overview on the various portfolios that she carries, and which is justice, women's initiatives, reclamation and healing, community wellness, crisis response, men's healing initiatives, and community training, and the fire prevention and safety with Mike McKay, early years and special initiatives. And there was a lot of discussion around concerns in some of the portfolios, and there was a lot of, there was a response as to how she is going to be addressing those issues for the communities. And then there was a report given by Deputy Chief Bobby Narcisse on the various portfolios that he holds. And also the commitment that he reported on, the commitment that's being given by ISC on the continuation of the Choose Life program. He gave an update on the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. And as a result of the findings of the Canadian government was guilty of discrimination in all areas regarding First Nations. And so this funding as a result of this decision will continue for the Choose Life program. And at the end of the day, we were able to finish with Victor Linklater, Deputy Grand Chief, discussed on what's needed for NAN to move forward regarding climate change and the economic development. And he needs a clear mandate, and draft vision statement was presented. And also he really expressed the need to have, there's 4 vacancies, I believe, on the Chiefs Committee. And he's looking to you to help him on this important portfolio, because as we see the results of climate change each day. And then Jennifer presented an update on the sustainable initiatives, which includes the planning and upcoming economic summit on November 2nd and 3rd in Toronto. So that was the day one. And just again, it's really important to get those resolutions. If there's any resolutions that need to be tabled, to get them in by 3 o'clock today. So that was your day one. It was a longer day. I think it was the only day that we could actually stay long, because today we have to get right into finishing by a certain time so you can go get your lipstick on. See, I see Grand Chief, he was putting his lipstick on earlier, so he's getting ready for this evening. So with that, I'd like to get right into the heart of the meeting, and I'd like to call upon Acting Mayor of Timmins, Kristen Murray, to come and do her address to the delegation.
All right, I made a few notes because I tend to ramble and I know everyone wants to get out of here, so I don't want to talk too long. So thank you. Welcome everyone to the City of Timmins on behalf of Mayor and Council. It's so exciting to see everyone here today. So my name is Kristen Murray. Mikasoasqueo is my spirit name. I am a member of Chapel Cree First Nation. I am a descendant of a signatory to Treaty 9, Henry Sailors. And last night, I became the first Indigenous mayor of the City of Timmins. I'm like still shaking. I was like, don't cry, don't cry. But it's so exciting. I ran for council in 2018, and there was a lot happening in the city. So I've lived in Timmins since 2001. I came here for college. A 17-year-old who was going to change the world, go back to my community and really help. But I stayed in Timmins and I'm doing what I can. And so in 2018, there was a lot happening. The Human Rights Commissioner came to Timmins and was very honest with our community. And she let us know that there's pervasive racism happening here. And I do want to acknowledge the two members from Fort Albany First Nation who tragically lost their lives in Timmins. And that really compelled me to want to run, because there's a lot of injustices that are happening to our people in urban communities. And I felt very, if not me, then who? I saw the slate of candidates and I'm like, these are not people who represent me and my kids. They're not people who can speak for me or make decisions for me. So I ran. And 3,396 people who don't really know me voted for me. So it was interesting because I'm not from Timmins, and I thought, maybe people wouldn't be as accepting of somebody who looks like me on council, but they spoke very clearly because I'm the first person to get that many votes on the City of Timmins Council. So it's exciting. They spoke and here we are. So I'm going to go back to my notes because I'll continue to ramble. I think this is a great opportunity to be here today. The fact that this is my first speaking engagement as the mayor, there's opportunities for NAN, and it's not lip service I'm talking about, real action, getting together. There's agreements that exist with Mushkegowuk, and that's great, but I wonder about NAN. There's opportunities for us to work together, to build those partnerships, strategic partnerships and alliances, to build capacity on both sides. So that's why I'm here today, to genuinely say that, I want us to walk together and create good things for the people within our community, because there's a lot of Indigenous people in the City of Timmins, and I've worked front lines with many of them for over nearly 20 years. I might look young, I'm not that young. But it hurts my heart to know that I've seen these young ones and they're growing up, and there's addictions and there's homelessness and there's those issues that exist. And the reality is, in Timmins, with our Indigenous people, they need a unique approach. Mainstream's not going to work for those. So I'm really looking forward to having those discussions with some of our deputy chiefs here and our grand chiefs. And And I wanted to acknowledge my chief, Keeter, who's not here, but I do want to acknowledge Keeter, as well as Deputy Grand Chief Victor Linklater, who has sort of, always encouraged me. Things get frustrating when you're trying to be a leader in a community where there's frustration and those kinds of things. So I do appreciate everyone around the table, as well as the individuals I mentioned. And I do look forward to our partnership. And I just want to appreciate everyone for coming to Timmins. And I hope that we'll have a lot of conversations. So miigwech, thank you for having me, and enjoy the rest of your meetings.
You got a gift here for you.
I just wanted to run away.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Why don't we do it with the executive?
You can go over here.
Well, that is a wonderful, wonderful encouragement. She is going to stay if there's any questions. If any of the delegates would like to ask her any questions, she will be here. Okay. So there is going to be an honor song for the mayor, and I introduced her as the acting mayor, so I guess she's a mayor now. Wow, that is great. So on the agenda, excuse me for that mistake, that's wonderful. So we're getting there. That's how I feel, and it's really encouraging to see a woman in that role. So with that, I'd like to call upon our youth co-chair to do the next topic.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call up Jennifer Guerreri to talk about the proposed nuclear waste deep geological repository. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to chiefs, proxies, elders, women, youth, and all those listening online. My name is Jennifer Guerreri. I'm the Public Health Infrastructure Policy Analyst at Anishinaabe Nation. I've worked on the transportation file for many years, and most recently I'm supporting the health infrastructure work with the Health Transformation Department. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present to you today on this very important topic. So I'm going to speak to you about the proposed nuclear waste deep geological repository in the Rebel Lake area just past Ignace, Ontario. So I'll start with a bit of an overview, and then I'll move into some of the potential impacts. Just trying to get the slide to work. Oh, there we go. Okay. So a bit of an overview. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization was established in 2002 by Canada's nuclear energy producers in accordance with the Nuclear Fuel Waste Act. The founding members of the organization are New Brunswick Power Corporation, Hydro-Quebec, and Ontario Power Generation. So the NWMO is proposing the construction of a deep geological repository to store Canada's nuclear waste. The repository would be built approximately 500 meters below ground and would also include a repackaging plant at surface level in order to transfer the waste from the containers it would be shipped in into the containers it will be stored in the repository. So there are still two sites currently on the table. One is South Bruce in southern Ontario, and the other, like I mentioned, the Rebel Lake area just past Ignace. It's important to note that Ignace is the favorable site because it is within the Canadian Shield. The NWMO feels that the sedimentary rock in that area would be the safest option. So it is the favorable decision. It's also important to note that the municipality of Ignace and the community of Wabigoon First Nation will be making the decision to approve this site location. It's also important to note that the site location will be chosen roughly within the next 6 months. They haven't given an exact date, but either by the end of this year or early 2023. So I'm here to provide information on the project and to talk about some of the potential implications to NAN territory. And I think it's important that the leadership have been properly engaged and, consent to a project of this nature. So the map you see on the screen identifies the 7 locations in Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick. So those are the reactor sites in Canada where the waste will be shipped from. So the volume of waste being shipped is the waste that's currently been produced. It doesn't include future waste, which we currently continue to generate for nuclear power in Canada. The current projections to move this waste from those 7 sites are 3 to 4 transport trucks, so commercial vehicles, a day for about 45 years is what it will take to move the current amount of waste. So I'd like to talk a bit about the environmental and human health concerns from the site itself. It's important to note that the proposed location encompasses watersheds that serve both Treaty Number 3 and Treaty Number 9. So the primary watershed being the Nelson River watershed and the secondary being the English River watershed, both ultimately flowing into Hudson's Bay. So the reason I'm here is to talk about potential risks from that site location. Storing the waste below ground is obviously concerning at that depth and the inability to actively monitor it. So there's risks from the facility itself, and like I mentioned, also at surface during the repackaging of the waste into the storage containers. It's also important to note that this waste is extremely dangerous. If there was to be any breach of the facility or spill in transport, it definitely would have human health and environmental impacts. Here I've just taken a few statements in regards to radiation. I think it's important to talk to people about the risks of radiation. It's important to note that it can cause damage to our bodies, to our skin, our blood, cause infertility, birth defects, and cancer. Higher doses of it obviously increase the risk, but it's important to note that no level of exposure to radiation is completely safe. It's also important to note that genetic damage, when DNA of a sperm or egg is exposed to radiation, can actually transfer those health impacts to the next generation. And also cancers that are caused by radiation do not appear immediately after exposure. It often takes time. So there's often a delayed effect in seeing the cases of cancer result from exposure to radiation. I should also note that it impacts the tissue and bone marrow of fish and animals the same way as it does humans. So obviously, fish and wildlife in the territory are important as a source of food and also as economic development, for outfitters and tourism. And as you can imagine, there would be many impacts. So I also want to touch on some of the concerns with the transportation of the waste. Holding the transportation file at NAN, I've done a lot of work looking into the transportation concerns that impact NAN territory. A lot of them are very unique, obviously, with Winter Road serving the territory. But I think, the distances that this waste is going to travel, we're talking as far as New Brunswick, and we've seen a sharp increase in commercial vehicle accidents. I think we've all seen it in the news. We've seen numerous highway closures, especially in the wintertime, issues with highway maintenance. And And so the stats that I've listed here were obtained through a Freedom of Information request from the MTO. So this is data received on the accidents, specifically in this slide between Chappaqua and Ignace. So it's important to note, although it's a very long journey for the waste to travel, that last 200, 250 kilometers shows the highest incident of commercial vehicle accidents. And as we know, many of them are fatal. They're often pretty severe wrecks. Speaking about the distances that it will travel, 3 to 4 trucks a day for 45 years is a substantial amount of waste being moved on our highways. It's going to move through many cities, towns, traditional territories, and in transport, there's severe risks if there ever was to be an accident or a spill. And like I said before, it doesn't include future waste. So if a repository was approved, that would be Canada's only place to store nuclear waste. So future waste produced by nuclear power generation, as well as small modular nuclear reactors, I think, which we've all been hearing about lately in the news as a solution to our carbon crisis. When we talk about what the alternative is, many environmental groups feel that the proximity approach is sort of the best approach to managing nuclear waste. So keeping it close to the site of generation, as to not cause environmental or human health impacts to other regions. And it needs to be actively monitored. This waste is toxic for thousands of years after it comes out of the reactor. And there is risks, in putting it in the ground in a place where it's not easily accessible and can't be monitored as it could be at surface. The next slide here is again some statistics from the MTO on motor vehicle collisions and with a breakdown of truck collisions. So this specific chart is taking you from the Pickering Nuclear Power Generation Station in Southern Ontario all the way to Ignace, broken down by corridor. So you'll see a sharp increase in the truck collisions, again in the section between Chappaqua and Ignace. And then a photo of one of the wrecks, which we've all seen in the news, and they're usually pretty tragic. So just quickly, I'll touch on a bit of an overview on the sort of historical past, I guess, at NAN on nuclear waste. So I did find a document from November 22nd, 1990. It was a submission made by Deputy Grand Chief Charles Fox at the time to the Federal Environmental Assessment Panel on the Atomic Energy of Canada Limited's nuclear waste fuel disposal concept. So when this sort of concept was first proposed. The document states concerns about future impacts to NAN territory, traditional activities, and to treaty and Aboriginal rights. Following that, there were resolutions in 95, 96, 2005, 2009, and then again in 2013. So I've listed them there. At the NAN Spring Assembly, we did hand out a briefing note and copies of the 5 previous resolutions, and I'd be happy to provide that to any chiefs or proxies that didn't receive it. It's also important to note that the current resolutions we have do not speak to the specific site location of Rebel Lake near Ignace, because when those resolutions were written, the NWMO had not narrowed that site selection at the time. So I think just before I open it to the floor, I really want to emphasize that, it's our job to bring forward concerns, to provide you with information so you can make an informed decision. And it's not intended in any way to infringe upon your rights to self-determination as sovereign nations, only to discuss the proposed project because there is NAN-wide implications. So I think next I will open it to the floor. I'm sure there's questions and comments that you'd like to make. So I think we'd like to hear from you as to how you would like NAN to handle this issue and approach this. Thank you.
Chief Chad?
Good morning. That's very scary. I'm glad that wasn't around when they were giving out blankets back in the days when the European settlement came about there. Like you said, if this is it's not if an accident is going to occur, it's when, because we've all seen it, and that's a pretty long distance for these trucks to travel with this contaminated stuff. Yes, it is a NAN issue. But it's also a provincial issue. It's a countrywide issue. I think we need to voice our concerns with the AFN. Let's shelf these internal problems that we're dealing with there. That's taking up a lot of time, and this is something they need to focus on and prioritize ahead of any mismanagement issues or financial restraints. So that's just my opinion.
Wache, what is the purpose of this presentation? Is it to inform us? Is it consultation? What is the purpose? And my other question is, if they made it at a particular site, then why wouldn't they get rid of it at that particular site? Why are they giving us this problem? And it sounds like it's not a simple problem. You said it, it's absolutely dangerous. And why are you introducing it to our territory when they made it down south?
Great question. Thank you for that. So, I guess that this waste is waste that's already been produced. So we're talking the last 50 to 60 years of nuclear power generation in Canada. And there hasn't been any other solution proposed as to how to manage the waste when they're done with it. So currently, the uranium's in the reactor for about 18 months. And when it comes out of the reactor, it's stored at the reactor site. So 60 years of waste has accumulated at these reactor sites. And my take on it would be that they one, want to get rid of it, but two, need to, because they continue to generate the waste. So they're probably running out of places to store it is ultimately the issue, and they need somewhere that they can store Canada's nuclear waste as a whole, right? Because we are talking about small modular reactors as a solution to the carbon crisis. So there will be, future waste. That I think it's at capacity where it is at the sites itself.
Again, my question is, what is the purpose of this presentation? Is it information sharing? Is it consultation? And why don't they get rid of it where they made it? Why are you bringing it into our territory?
Yes, so I am just here to share the information. When this issue came to my attention, I did feel that there would be potential impacts, to NAN territory, and so it's my job to bring forward anything to the leadership that is of concern. So I'm just here to deliver the information, and I think to ask the leadership what you would like us to do.
Keep it down south?
Yeah, so I think when we talk about the Ignace site, like I mentioned, it is favorable because of the Canadian Shield. The NWMO claims that sedimentary rock is the safest place to store this waste. We do know that the Canadian Shield is a living, moving thing, but Southern Ontario, there's not a lot of space, let's be honest, right? There's huge populations and not a lot of Crown land or places that they could store this waste. In the Rebel Lake area, they've set aside over 200,000 hectares for this.
We have the Ring of Fire looking at our territory, and the Premier wants to bring a bulldozer down to our territory. And now you're talking about this waste. Northern Ontario is not a garbage can. Maybe you can take that to your supervisors and talk about getting rid of that nuclear waste down south. And as a NAN chief, it doesn't belong up. We didn't create this problem, and we shouldn't inherit it. And given that it's going to be around for how many thousands of, like forever.
Yeah.
You're asking us to inherit a very dangerous, life-threatening, and it would threaten the economy as well and the environment. And you're talking to us like we want it. I, as one chief, do not want this in our territory. You know, we have to fight against, work with the Ring of Fire, and now this. Like, how much money are you talking about? I don't think there's enough money that can should be allowed to store this stuff in our territory. But you're talking about all the dangers, and we're all sitting here listening to you, and I'm cringing. You know, we work for 7 generations of our people. I don't want to pass this down to my son, my grandson, and then his sons. I don't want that. You go ahead.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chief. Just a correction there, or any misunderstanding. Jennifer works for NAN. She just informing us on her research on what's going on with nuclear waste, and the purpose is, as she stated, to inform the chiefs and the nation and the people of NAN of the waste that they want to dump in the north. That could affect, as we saw in our presentation, the rivers and our animals, our people. And I know that MPP Saul Mamako is here. Him and I talked about this a little bit. We talked a little bit about the advocacy that must, at this point, I feel, be needed to ensure that that waste does not enter the north. And it's going to take some political advocacy, but at this point, the point of the presentation from NAN is just to ensure that the chiefs know what the government is trying to do, what nuclear waste is trying to do, which is put it in our territory. And as we know, Ignace and Wabigoon, as stated in the presentation, are working on something to get this done. But I know neighboring communities have raised this issue. Some of our neighboring NAN communities that are very close to Ignace, but it's going to affect the entire north, and we know the high rate of accidents between Chappaqua and Ignace or Uppsala. Those who know the area well know there's a fatality there almost every, it's every few weeks it seems like, and those trucks will be going through there. So this is very concerning, and I believe in my heart that we as a nation, as chiefs and assembly, really need to put a stop to this. So that's some of my responses. Brenda, thanks.
Hello, good morning. My name is Brenda Fox. I'm from Shigogmunk First Nation, and I sit on the Women's Council. And when I've noticed that through the years that this topic has been in almost like behind the curtain kind of movement, but it's coming to the forefront where it has been narrowed down to a particular area. Where before, as where my understanding is that NAN had all these resolutions to keep this away with previous leaders, and now that the government has narrowed down to Wabigoon and Ignace, you know, now we're starting to have that forefront information, and that affects us. You know, that affects my community, because that's the road to for us to get to urban centers. You know, you know, it is a scary thought when I think about it. You know, I agree with the chief that says, you know, we have to think 7 generations ahead. This goes beyond our 7 generations, and I don't want it in our area. And you know, the NAN previous governing body, they were able to have these resolutions. But now I think that we need a resolution to say that the area that they're Wabigoon, and I know that's a Treaty 3 area, and Ignace, we don't agree to that. And you know, you got to make that stand. Sometimes you have to. You know, we're always put up against the wall, especially when it comes to our land. And I don't want that. I don't want as the chief said, I don't want anybody's garbage in my backyard. We got.
Are there any other questions? Chief Black?
Good morning. Jennifer, did you say the ultimate decision is up to Ignis and Wabigoon?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, did you also say that Treaty 9 is impacted by this?
Yes, that's correct.
So why are we not in the decision? We need to be involved in that decision. This is a ridiculous discussion. I can't believe that we're having this. It made me sick. You know, you're talking about our watersheds, you're talking about our children. Oh my goodness. So, you know, you need to stop this and we need to get involved. So, you know, Grand Chief, you need to stop this. This is unacceptable. You're going to end up having a huge protest if it doesn't. Guaranteed. I mean, we're already dealing with mining and there's already a threat with our water where mining's concerned, and there's mines everywhere. And everybody just wants the money and nobody's thinking about the water or the safety of our communities. So and now this is, I knew about this in Pickering in the late 80s. And I knew that one of our band members was protesting that nuclear plant in Pickering because they lived there. And now it's moving this way. I'm actually going to follow up with them, but they want to bring it this way. And you know, that can't happen. Miigwech.
Thank you for your comments.
So there's clear direction to have a resolution done for this. So if you guys would like to get into that. Oh, Chief Muniz.
Hello, good morning. It's pretty disturbing. It's concerning. We live on the Ottawapiskat River system. We live on a river system that has a lot of life. Our people went to the river system this past week. And that's the kind of things we've talked about. Our elders, our women, our youth, even a 2-year-old traveled over 100 kilometers on that river system. That's how important our lands, our homelands, and our waters are. And this is going to impact us. If you think that it's not, it is. Every First Nation, every community is going to be impacted. Because that's our connections, our waters, our rivers. So I think we need to act in this assembly. We need to have a resolution to oppose what's happening right now. It's not good. And we know that we have not provided our informed consent to these developments that are being proposed. As the presenter said, and I thank the presenter for sharing that. I think it's important that we need to know those kind of information, very important information. And I know this has been raised by some of our community members in our First Nation, the potential impact, the adverse impacts that it will have for generations, not just the 7th, but for generations to come. We have to do something. We have to stand together. We have to make a position that we need to do something. One First Nation or one town cannot decide for all of us what's going to happen on our traditional lands. And that's something that we have to do right now. I know there's a resolution before us right now. I think we need to seriously consider to stand with that resolution where our people should be the ones to determine what's going to happen on our traditional homelands, on our communities, on our river systems. Our way of life is so important. It's important to who we are as people. And a lot of our community members really still enjoy their way of life, what Mother Earth, Mother Nature has been able to provide us with. We have an abundance of that getting on in our community, in our river system. And the thought of having a nuclear waste site in our area is just not something that we can live with. I don't think we can live with that. I don't think our generations to come can accept that, and will be able to live in harmony. Certainly, if there is a resolution that's on the floor, certainly I'll try to support it. I think it's important. We need to band together. We need to mobilize our people as well to try to get them to help what we're trying to do, to make them understand the importance of this issue that's coming. The presenter, within 6 months, there's going to be a decision, some sort of a decision that's going to be made. Where's our people? Where's my people that are living in our communities? Where's our elders? How come they're not able to be engaged in ways that in their own language? We have our own protocols in our communities. How come those are not respected? Since it's going to impact us for generations. Our rights, our jurisdiction, our title, our homelands are at stake with this proposal that's being shared to us with information. So I don't think Neshkanaga cannot support a site like that in Ignis. I can tell you that. And we will fight whatever we can get in on. We're a small community, but we're a very strong, determined community. I know in my heart, Gaining, that our people will stand up, and that's what we need to do when we're dealing with when our rights are being undermined, when decisions are going to be made to undermine our way of life, our rights, and this is a big threat. So it's important, I think, to stand united on this resolution. If we're going to put a resolution on the floor, it's something that we have to do. It's something we have to strongly oppose and protect our people. Our people's lives and health are at stake here. This is big here. Okay, Migach.
Miigwech, Chief Muñoz. So I'm going to help out our youth co-chair. There is a draft resolution that has just gone around the table. There has been a very swift reaction, very rapid response from the delegation here this morning, that something needs to be done, that we need a resolution. So there was a resolution that was ready to go. That has been brought around the table, so we will get right into the resolution in response to this immediate response that we received from the floor. Now, just a reminder, Jennifer Guerreri is here. She does work for NAN, and she was just here to make the presentation to caution everybody and provide all of the facts. And with that, we've gotten a very quick response. And I know that there has been some questions to Jennifer that may have sounded like she was the one proposing or working with the organization bringing this forward. That's not the case. Jennifer is here working for you and bringing you accurate information. So there is a resolution that is has been presented. Chief Sutherland.
Miigwech, Chair. I just have a comment to make to the presenter. It was a knee-jerk reaction when someone comes and introduces this idea, and I hope we get the same reaction when the actual proponents come to make this presentation. But for now, I just want to say to the presenter that was well presented, and highlights were amazing. They punch to the stomach, and it was great. So I think we needed to have that kind of presentation just so we can get that kind of reaction. This is a huge potential of a lot of damage, even to our culture. So thank you very much to the presenter. Miigwech.
Miigwech, thank you very much, Chief Sutherland. Matthew, proxy for Kingfisher.
Yeah, I just have a question pertaining to, have there been any previous engagements provided to NAN chiefs?
Thank you for your question. Not that I'm aware of. I've been at NAN since 2015. I do know that resolution, the last one that was passed in 2013, the NWMO had approached NAN in order to learn about the project. They've done that with a lot of First Nation communities and municipalities when they were working through that site selection process to try to narrow down who was a willing host community. Thank you.
So with that, we do have the resolution has been handed out. I'd like to get right into the resolution. If I can have it put up on the screen, please. So we will get right into the resolution. Again, helping out our youth co-chair, who we will make sure that she deals with the resolution today. Resolution 2213. You do have it in front of you. It is up on the screen. I'm not going to read the entire resolution, the whereas section, but it's titled NAN Opposition to the Nuclear Waste Management Organization's Proposed Deep Geological Repository to Store Nuclear Waste near Ignace, Ontario. Again, 2213. So the therefore be it resolved reads, therefore be it resolved that the NAN Chiefs in Assembly do not support the NWMO's concept of a DGR near Ignace, Ontario, due to many health and safety concerns, the potential for devastating impacts to the environment, and the lack of consent from NAN communities and members. Finally, be it resolved that the NAN Chiefs in Assembly mandate the NAN Executive Council to take action to prevent the NWMO and the Government of Canada from placing any nuclear waste in NAN traditional territories. Dated this 10th day of August. I'm just going to get that typed in. Dated at Timmins, Ontario, this 10th day of August, 2022. So with that, the resolution is before you. I will ask for a mover to the resolution. Chief Wayne Munoz, miigwech. Can I have a seconder? Chief Sutherland, Constance Lake, miigwech. So we have a mover and a seconder. I will go back to speak to the issue. Oh. Grand Chief, if I can get you to a microphone, please. Actually, if you want to come to the table. Yeah, that'd be great.
I'll just wait.
Okay.
Just reviewing the past resolutions there, like, it just says we oppose, we strongly oppose. Now there's action. What kind of action are you going to be doing? There should be some kind of direction from the NAN chiefs in regards to action. You know, there's going to be a decision made soon, and we can't sit on this any longer. So I'd like to see something set in place by the NAN chiefs to go forward with action. Is there going to be legal action? What are we going to do? Are we going to continue to say we're opposed? Those are my thoughts.
Good. Thank you very much, Grand Chief. So initially what I'm going to do is go to the mover and the seconder for any comments and further elaboration or any additions that are required for the resolution. So Chief Munoz.
Okay, thank you. I move this resolution, and we know how important it is. We know how in our own respective areas, and we have our own processes. We know that our autonomous nature of our communities is so important, and that's what this resolution should also be calling for: to respect our First Nations, to have the ability and to have the opportunity to have a say. More importantly, to provide their free, prior, informed consent and informed decision-making processes that allows communities to do that. In 6 months, what we were told, there's going to be a decision made, a decision that will impact all of us. But there's only a few people that are going to make that decision for us. And that's just unacceptable. Our rights are at stake here. Our jurisdiction, our lives of our communities. So we need to take some action, immediate action, as duly noted by the previous speaker. We need to do that. Because it's not much time. If we have to take strategies or legal action or whatever actions we need to take in order to get ourselves in a position where our rights are protected, are recognized. And that's very important, because if there is a spill, it's not going to impact only the site. It's going to impact our river system. It's going to impact our sturgeon. Our sturgeon is so important in our community. That's why we went on the river system over this past few weeks. And we have to mobilize our First Nations, our communities, to bring awareness how important this issue is. So if there's any additions to the resolution, to have a more aggressive, proactive approach to trying to get this thing, that's what we need to do. And that's the reason why I moved it and why we support this resolution. Because it's going to undermine us as First Nations. The presenter. It's already undermining our rights as people, as nations. And it's going to impact our traditional homelands. Yeah, Migach.
Miguel, thank you, Chief, for those comments as the mover. Chief Sutherland, seconder, any comments?
Miigwech, Chair. I just want to concur with the previous chief. I don't have much to add other than the huge health risks that are there, inherent, and that our duty as chiefs are always to be mindful of next generations. So much so it's like 7 generations and then some. So those are my remarks, Miigwech.
Thank you very much. So the resolutions team is just working on some wording. I'm just looking at the screen here. It is up on the screen. And there are 2 points that have been raised on the floor, 2 additions, and I believe those 2 have been reflected. So I'm just waiting for, that's good? Okay. So it reads, finally be it resolved that an action plan must be implemented immediately, must respect the rights of our First Nations, and must be conditional upon the free, prior, and informed consent of the NAN First Nations. Chief Munoz, does that do what you were asking for? Good. Grand Chief Linklater, does that do what you're asking for? I'll have to get closer and have a look.
We should set a timeline for that, make sure there's a date to ensure, and even to have like some kind of committee to develop a plan to bring it back to us, to the NAN chiefs, but make sure there's a date added to it. So in that way, we're going to be following through with this, and that there's accountability.
Okay, thank you. So the Resolutions Committee has added 3 months. So it reads, finally be it resolved that an action plan must be developed within the next 3 months, must respect the rights of our First Nations, and must be conditional upon the free, prior, and informed consent of the NAN First Nations. So that takes into account the recommendations on the floor. So we have had comment from the mover and seconder. Mover, you're okay with the change? Okay, seconder, you're okay? All right, floor is open. If there are any comments, chiefs, delegates, any comments to the resolution? Chief Black?
I just have a question. You said there was a resolution in 2013. So what action was done since then? Like, can anybody speak to it? To the history a little bit of what they were proposing back then? Who in NAN was working on it? Is anybody here that could speak to it? Like, give us a little, because I want to know what you did. Like, what did you do? Just put the council resolution, the resolution forward, say here, it's over, it's done? Or was there a process? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yep, thank
Because
you.
are we going to be repeating those steps, or?
So I'm going to turn to Jennifer. I know that as part of the presentation, there was a background, but as part of the presentation, we were advised that at this point, there is a final decision ready to be made. That back then,
I'm
it
just
was
trying
preliminary.
to
Yep.
see if, are we going to be, repeating what we did before, or is there going to be a different action plan?
Mhm.
I'm just trying to understand actually through myself.
Thank you. It was before my time at NAN, so just to my best understanding, I believe it was Goyce Kakagamic who was working on the file in 2013 when that most recent resolution was passed. And I believe the purpose was to learn about the project. So it was to get support for NAN to learn about the NWMO's concept of a deep geological repository. And unfortunately, I don't know much more than that. Besides, but I can provide you with a copy of those resolutions. Thank you.
Miigwech.
Miigwech. Chief Muñoz.
Okay, I just wanted to reiterate, and I want to give my support to the Grand Chief and the Executive on this resolution. Let's not wait for 3 months. Let's not wait until 3 months we talk about this. I think it's important, as soon as this resolution is passed, work has to start. We have to start developing something. We have to start making noise. We have to start mobilizing our people. We have to start putting in place what we need to do. That's what this resolution is. I'm hoping that's what this resolution is going to do, because of the urgency, because of the threat that's going to happen on our people, on our homelands. The decision is being left to somebody to decide for what's going to happen on our traditional homelands. And that's just unacceptable. That's unacceptable. And there's an urgency to do something. So I know there's a 3 month, 3 months, but we need to get it going. We need to get it started. So I just want to reiterate that the importance and the urgency of this resolution, if we can get it passed and supported at this assembly. We need this done. We need to do it. We need to get it done right away so we can start acting on what we need to do in order to protect ourselves today and also even for the future. That's what we need to do. It's incumbent of us, of this assembly, collect dust, and hopefully I'll start this next week, 2 weeks, or next month. That's not the attitude that this resolution should be encouraging. We have to get it going. And that's the support move on this resolution, is to get something going right away, because we're behind. We need to start. I look at the Grand Chief while I'm talking. He's looking at me. Okay, Miche.
Miigwech. Proxy Frank, and then I'll turn it over to Grand Chief.
Yes,
Frank McKay.
I understand this issue has been raised previously in our meetings, and this is an ongoing discussions that had been happening. And we have presented our position that Anishinaabe Nation would be a nuclear-free zone, one of the resolution I've seen. And of course, this process is still continuing up to this point where they're going to make a final decision in this fall, I think. And what are we going to do in relation to ensure that our position is adhered to and is enforced? How do we make this not happen? That's the concern I have, because we already had said no to the nuclear waste deposit in Ignis, but it's still an ongoing thing, and we have not done nothing to stop that process up to now. Now we have to stand up and develop a plan in terms of how do we stop it. Thank you.
Miigwech, I was going to turn it to Grand Chief, but Women's Council, Brenda.
Hello, hi. I'm Brenda Fox for NAN Women. The Women's Council feel that there should be, like, going with Frank said. Sorry, Frank, I had to look at you. That we do need to take some kind of action, and they're suggesting a legal something in the resolution to say that we are willing to take legal action against Canada to protect our homelands.
Miigwech, I'll give it to Grand Chief.
Thank you, chiefs, delegates, and those listening online. Been getting texts from chiefs who can't attend in person, and Chief Munias and I are always looking at each other when he's speaking, and we do that because he's got high expectations of the Grand Chief and the executive, and I'll assure you, chiefs, that 2013 this work started, and I conversed with our executive and some people on text there from former chiefs. It was an educational piece. There was some work from NUMO, they're called, to educate some of the membership on what nuclear waste was, and but in that time those resolutions still passed from NAN declaring a nuclear free zone. And I'll assure you, chiefs, that I'm going to do all I can to put a stop to this. If I got to be at the front lines of a protest, I'll be there. I'm going to do all I can, and I've got the direction. That's a good next step, and it's going to be a different plan of action. I assure you that it's going to be different. We have our executive here who fully supports this mandate and this resolution, and I assure you, if I have to be the one there getting all the way to jail even and putting a stop to this, I hope it doesn't come to that, but I will assure you that I'll be there right with our membership and our leadership, ensuring that this waste does not enter our territory. So thank you, chiefs.
Miigwech, Grand Chief. Okay, I got hands up all over the place. Okay, I've got here Youth Council, Chief Wesley, and then proxy for Moose Creek. So Youth Council member.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm Janine Frog from the NAN Youth Council, and I just want to say thank you for the chiefs for really standing up against this issue that's coming into our homelands. And I want to say thank you to Jennifer for bringing this topic and this issue to our Youth Council before this meeting, because even before this is really terrifying, honestly, and especially as much as it impacts our people and it impacts our babies. Like as Helen said, they can't speak for themselves, and we have to speak for them. And it's really scary too how this is happening. These discussions are happening behind our backs. Like it's not being talked about on the Chiefs of Ontario level either, I don't believe. And there's I know on the environmental newsletter they recently came out, me and Teo were on it, but then I was looking for other issues that are like impacting our lands, but this one wasn't on there. And I just find it unbelievable that, they're looking to our territory, and we already have enough issues impacting our people as it is. And you see the environment, health impacts that came from like that are impacting grassy narrows with the mercury in the water. And how long are they going to be affected by that? This is just affecting our treaty rights. And my dad always told me growing up that we're treaty people, and as long as the grass is green and our rivers are flowing, but then what are we going to do when the rivers aren't flowing anymore? And we have to, and I'm glad that we're all standing up, and we have to protect our people and our homelands. And the youth don't want these impacts impacting our generations to come. Which
Miigwech, thank you from the Youth Council. Before I move on, there was a suggested amendment. I'm looking for Chief Muñoz. He is in the back of the room. There was a suggested amendment. So you'll see on the screen, the second last, further be it resolved. There's an addition there. So it reads, further be it resolved that the NAN Chiefs in Assembly mandate the NAN Executive Council to take action to prevent the NWMO and the Government of Canada from placing any nuclear waste in NAN traditional territories, including the consideration of legal action. Chief Muñoz, are you okay with that as the mover? Good. Chief Sutherland, you're okay with it?
Miigwech, I spoke very, well, as quickly as I could with Wayne walking by here, talking about our legal options, and one of them is to get an injunction. An injunction may take at least 3 months. So, an injunction will stop the process until such time that at least the people bringing the injunction has had an opportunity to discuss at large. And NAN is a big territory, so the chiefs need to have, my friends talking about informed consent. So I think we'll need that time, and an injunction can afford us that opportunity. Miigwech.
Thank you. So the text that's in there, including the consideration of legal action, that would include an injunction, or do you want it specifically specified in there?
If we specify it, then next chiefs will understand what we were talking about, so perhaps we can be explicit to include injunction.
Okay. I'm just going to wait for the resolutions committee.
Miigwech.
Miigwech. So I'm just looking at the screen here. We'll give them a minute. Yes, yeah. We're just going through some of the wording, and we do have some draft wording, but we're just going to have a quick consultation just to make sure it's appropriate. Sorry, that's what happens when you get three lawyers huddling back here. We're just going to make a little change, and I'm going to give it to Chief Sutherland. Again, as Chair of the Assembly, I cannot get involved in the wording. So Chief Sutherland, we did have some proposed wording there with the Resolutions Committee, so if you just want to comment on what we have there highlighted in yellow.
Miigwech. I know this broadcast is far and wide, so I'm just going to say we're going to keep the word action to include any actions. And we're not going to limit it to one word, and that is injunction. So we'll just remove injunction and just keep it open. So in that way, in the future, they're not going to bring back our resolution and say, well, you know what, you had an option, you turned your mind to injunction, now you didn't use injunction, that, so let's just leave it open. Miigwech.
Miigwech, thank you, Chief Sutherland. We're just looking at the screen here. So we're making some changes. I'm going to go back to the mover, if he's okay with them, once we have that. So again, the change is going back to just adding, you see it up on the screen, adding, including the consideration of any form of legal action. Chief Muñoz, that's okay? Okay. Yeah, if you can turn on your mic and look at the Grand Chief.
Where is he? He's right over there. Maybe just add maybe Ontario, because Ontario has a role in this as well. So.
Okay, so a suggestion is to add the Government of Ontario as well. So right now we have NWMO and the Government of Canada. So suggestion is to add the Government of Ontario as well. Okay, there we go. So I'll read the entire, further be it resolved that the NAN Chiefs in Assembly mandate the NAN Executive Council to take action to prevent the NWMO, the Government of Canada, and the Government of Ontario from placing any nuclear waste in NAN traditional territories, including the consideration of any form of legal action. So Chief Muñoz, that's good. All right, Chief Sutherland. Okay. The floor is still open. Oh, sorry. Yes. I was going to go to Chief Wesley and then Moose Cree. Chief Wesley, go ahead.
Well, I had a lot to say on this matter, but everything's pretty much covered except the wording around civil disobedience or protests. That needs to be added on there, because you need to inform them folks over there that, you know, these are the actions we're going to take. So some wording around civil protest or disobedience should be in there, and the final be the result. The action plan must be implemented within the next 3 months, as opposed to developed, because this has to be done within a certain time frame. It's a serious matter, and we need to move on it very quickly.
Thank you, Chief Wesley. Your microphone is a little bit staticky, so there's a microphone there. What I did catch was the 3 months. Okay, resolution team caught that. I just want to make sure that they caught the first part. So right now it reads, must be developed and implemented within the next 3 months. Chief Wesley, I think that's what you were saying?
No, drop the develop and just insert implemented.
Okay. Must be implemented within the next 3 months, okay. And the first point?
The first point was that we have some, you know.
Actually, if you can use the other microphone, there's.
Okay, well, the first point was we have to insert some kind of wording in there that outlines the need for civil protest or a protest of some kind, and we have the groups present that can undertake that. And Grand Chief has volunteered to be on the front lines. So that's all I wanted to add.
Okay, Miigwech. So the change, the addition has been including civil protests and the condition of any legal, or sorry, any form of legal action. Is that good? Okay. Chief Muñoz, you're okay with that? So there's two things. We've added including civil protests. On the second last, further be it resolved. So it reads, including civil protests and the consideration of any form of legal action. That's one of them. The other is, when we were talking about the 3 months, it now reads, an action plan must be implemented within the next 3 months. That means put in place rather than developed.
Can you maybe add, I know there's maybe other stuff that are going to come up for that, including, is there a word, a general word that you can add to the civil protest and the consideration of legal action? Is there another generalized word that can be included there somewhere so we can cover any other relevant or related activities or that can be done, whether if it's to mobilize our people, whether if it's to do other stuff. But I think the Grand Chief is well aware and what needs to be done, and we can certainly support him and the executive how this could be done, or vice versa. So I don't know. Okay.
So,
yeah, that last one looks good.
Okay, so we have on the board, just for the record, including civil protests, the consideration of any form of legal action, and any other appropriate measures. Good. Chief Sutherland, you're okay with it? Very good. Chief Wesley, that's good. Proxy for Moose Cree.
Good morning. Warren Hardesty, proxy for Moose Cree First Nation. I'll be as brief as I can. I just wanted to make a quick comment on this. Moose Cree First Nation does not support this. Just looking back on the previous resolutions, it goes as far back as 1995. I was less than 2 years old at that time. I'm sitting here now, a man of 28, and here we still are. And furthermore, I think a committee needs to be developed on this. Like I mentioned, it goes far back as 1995. This problem is not going to go anywhere. So I think if we had a formal group to address this and monitor the situation and develop recommendations to the NAN chiefs, I think that would be great. As mentioned by the Grand Chief of Mushkegowuk. Furthermore, I'm trying to think of some other things that we can do to be proactive individually as First Nations, and I'm thinking if NAN can draft up some ECRs, bylaws perhaps, that can be distributed to us First Nations to enact in our own territories. I think that would be another good step to take, because I think of the National Marine Conservation that was started up in James Bay, Hudson's Bay this year. I think of the North French watershed in our territory here in Moose Cree. One of the last remaining freshwater areas in the world. So I just wanted to make those comments and make that known that this problem's not going to go anywhere, and we need to stay on top of it. Thank you.
Miigwech, proxy for Moose Cree. I'm just looking to the resolutions committee. They are making some additions. What I was going to, just to give some thought, that there is direction for a plan to be put in place that can be incorporated in the plan, but we do have some wording there. So right now, we've got the addition of including the formation of a Chiefs and Technical Action Committee, civil protests, the consideration of any form of legal action, and any other appropriate measures. So that's been added in there. I think the other suggestion I heard from you was maybe some templates for First Nations, not BCRs, maybe declarations, because of course BCRs only apply on reserve under the Indian Act. So maybe some support in terms of community declarations, but that can be part of the plan. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be included in the resolution, but I think the point is taken. Resolutions Committee, I'm just going back. Is that final? Oh, that's good. Okay. So Proxy Hardesty, that's good. Okay. Chief Munoz, mover. Okay. Seconder, Chief Sutherland. Chief Sutherland, you're okay with it? Okay, thank you. The floor is still open. Very good discussion, very quick response, immediate response to the presentation. I'm just going to look to our virtual platform. I don't know that we have any hands up. I don't think so. Proxy Frank McKay.
Just further to the legal action to be considered, I think, what the first thing, the immediate thing that the Executive Council should do is to issue a cease and desist letter. I don't know if that was ever formulated when we undertook this position several years back, and I think that will, if it's a negative response, then we move on into the legal action that may be required at that time. But I think that would be one of the measures that could be taken is to issue immediately a cease and desist letter to the giving them notice that we don't support this action. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Do you want that in the resolution, or is that just part of the direction on the floor?
If it's part of the resolution, then it'll be more. It'd be more directly action be taken upon.
Okay. So I'm looking to the resolutions team. I hope you got that. Okay, good. Yeah. Are we good? All right, thank you. So it reads, I'll just read the last part that's highlighted, including the formation of a Chiefs and Technical Action Committee, civil protests, the consideration of any form of legal action, starting with a cease and desist declaration or letter, and any other appropriate measures. Frank, that's what you're looking for? Yep. Chief Munoz? Okay. Chief Sutherland? Thank you. Floor is still open. Okay, proxy for Mashkiwagamank, and then I'll come over to Mashkadam. We might have a problem with that microphone, I'm not sure, but go ahead, give it a try. Okay, there we go. We'll use the remote.
My name is Marianne Panichis. I'm proxy for David Mashkiwagamank. And I just want to make a comment. Things dan our territory giginit kasi si king we are just sem ka kanshonat going mines nikatan even with the mines that are coming up in our territories just get when no ka katisin jigatik nanagten tamang good thing maniganis sogan yusnanak we know to the next much when our territory, and I just want to make a comment. my cousin Darlene, been walking when a couple of years ago, she made that loop from Ignis right around Savant Lake and Silcoat and back to Ignis, trying to bring awareness of this about Semgwick and Ignis. And of course, I guess we didn't pay attention to her. And Ganinit Kutingo in our community, she did tell us why she was walking. We got the now. And I'm sure she'll be glad that it's coming to this table now that I know she's a protester. Probably she'll be there with Grand Chief. Mia Kitian.
Amigos. Proxy, was that you, Doug? Yeah, Doug Beardy, Muscatine.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Grand Chief Fox, and everybody else, Executive Council. I just wanted to say, with regards to the resolution, we've listened to all our women around the table speak passionately about against the resolution or against what's going to happen here. So I'm going to recommend, can I, on the third, be it resolved there, where it says, therefore be it resolved that the NAN chiefs in assembly do not support the NWMO's concept. Can you switch the wording over to vehemently oppose instead of do not support?
Yep.
Thank you.
So I'm just looking for the resolutions committee to put in that wording in the resolution. Okay, there we go. So it reads, therefore be it resolved that the NAN chiefs in assembly, we'll just finish that. The NAN chiefs in assembly vehemently oppose the NWMO's concept of a DGR near Ignis. So there's that addition. Thank you. Yep. We're good. Mover is good. Seconder? Good. Alrighty. Any more discussion on the resolution? Any more discussion? Third call. Chief Black.
Okay, this is not in regards to the resolution, but it is a question for Jennifer. Jennifer, did you come across a nuclear waste elders committee in maybe 2000, if you've seen it in your information in around 2006-07? There was an elders consultation committee of some sort. I don't know their exact title, but I remember that time there, and maybe Frank remembers or heard, Honorable Frank, that this committee, they were actually involved and they were meeting at various locations. And I do believe they met in Garden River at one point by Sault Ste. Marie. Now, I was told at that time by the elder, and this was a spiritual elder, that they were planning this waste repository or whatever it's called. And they were opposing it, but I don't know what exactly involved the discussion. So that's something you might want to research and see if you can come up with that information. It may help you because those elders, their voices are very loud, and somebody needs to follow up to what happened there, if it is the same. I'm assuming it is.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I am not aware of it, but I will definitely look into that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Migach.
Thank you. So in terms of the resolution, Proxy Frank, Honorable Frank. I like that.
Anyways, thank you. I just wanted to add a point in relation to Chief Black's comment. And I think it's very important, what past efforts that we have made in our organization, in mounting a forceful opposition to the events that we do not agree with. And I think we need to look at the past learning experiences that we have had. One of the other things still I wanted to point out and mention is that, we have an MPP in attendance here in the assembly, Saul Mamakwe. I think we can utilize his expertise at the provincial legislation to raise this issue at that provincial legislation also. That I'm not asking for it to be in a resolution, but to make a recommendation to the executive that we have to use all means of expertise. Avenues that we have, to mount the opposition that we have in this resolution, including our MP. Eric Mario, to raise that in the Canadian Parliament. Thank you.
Miigwech, thank you, Frank. Miigwech dugumam nan gaikid Saul Mamakwe. Miigwech mi kanunuguin suijgabo itamanwe. Ega e pagid na muat sugumakanak. Yue chitujgadek with giwednang. Yue ugumawan gas daznang. Miwe suijgabo itaman chigan ujgetamo da anshinok. Miwe ganunuguin. Feels very good to speak to our MPP in our language and give him that strong direction from the chiefs. So, miigwech. And again, I'd like to acknowledge that our MPP is here from the Keewaydin riding. We'd like to have him come up and give him a few minutes sometime before he leaves, I think early this afternoon. So we'll get him to come up. With that, the resolution is on the floor. I'd like to, do I hear a question? Question has been called, thank you. So the resolution is before you. Any opposition to the resolution? Any opposition to the resolution before you? Did I see a hand up? Okay, that was off to the side. Somebody's scratching their ear. Last call, any opposition? I see none. Any abstentions to the resolution? Any abstentions? Just looking to the virtual, any abstentions? I see none. All in favor of the resolution, raise your hand. Thank you. So with that, the resolution is carried. Thank you very much, miigwech. I'm gonna, just looking at the time, it's 10 to 11. I'm gonna forego the break, so thank you very much. If you really need to take a stretch, sneak out quietly. But if you can bear with us, we'll get right along on the agenda. So the next agenda item, I'm going to ask Deputy Grand Chief Achnibenes come to introduce the next presentation. Also ask Ovid Mercredi and Natalie Bingwis to come up and make the presentation on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. That's UNDRIP. Now, don't everybody take a stretch at the same time. I shouldn't have said it that way. I meant one at a time. So we can have you please stay in the room. You want a break? Okay, we are taking a stretch. We'll take a 5-minute break. Okay, 5 minutes. I just learned a lesson there. 5-minute break. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Be good.
Still you? Yeah. Me too.
I'm gonna go this way. Julie, you can come this way. Jess, you can come this way. Yeah.
Oh, I feel so young.
She'll just go in there and then we'll take her photo. Yeah, you can too if you want. So we're gonna go on this side, I guess?
Trying to get my best side here. Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. Alrighty, we've had a good stretch. We've got some chiefs in the back of the room. If you can make your way back to the table, please. We'd like to reconvene our assembly. As a Janyad Naigwekmina. As a Tamaji Batumagan, the agenda. So we can have or anyone can make a holler out the door. We can get delegates back into the meeting room. I was gonna say, where's Ovid? He's right there. It's gonna take a few minutes. Can we just get started, or we're gonna wait? Okay, I'll give it. Getting there.
That's a tough one from a radio standpoint, Ignis.
Yeah.
Because it's on Treaty 3 territory, but it leaks into, we kind of similar to what's happening with,
Yeah.
what happened right in those areas, but the river systems can't get it until the other throughout. It's somewhere, it might be a learning. Yeah.
Also,
Yeah, and it's been discussed for some time. Like 10 years?
Okay, miwag is much to it. Thank you for coming back into the room at a little good 5-minute stretch. So we've got quite an agenda to go through. We'll get into the next item. And again, that's the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP. And I'm going to give it to Deputy Grand Chief Ajnipneskam to introduce the topic.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, chiefs and delegates. So we have the next half hour here to do a presentation and share some information on UNDRIP. It's a United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. It's back in 2007, the declaration was adopted at the UN. And at that time, Canada was one of the 4 countries that did not vote in favor of it. And it was just within the last few years that Canada also supported this. And so UNDRIP falls under our justice portfolio, and Natalie Bingus is our director on that. And we have also sought and secured the assistance of Ovid Burkhardy, who many of you know, and he will be helping us with this file. So at this time, I will introduce Natalie, who will briefly introduce herself and the work that she's doing. Then afterwards, Ovid will provide us with a presentation and some information. Miigwech.
Anine, good morning. Natalie Bingus, Nijishnikaz. Before I begin my short presentation, I would like to thank Matagami First Nation for being our host community. The Drum, elders, women, youth, and all of the chiefs, proxies, and for those who are listening on the radio and watching online. Chimigwech to DGC Ashni Peninskam for the introductions. Today, I'm honored to stand before you and make a short presentation on the upcoming engagement that NAN will be having on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act on September 15th. Ovid Burkhardy, as you know, will be speaking to the presentation on what is UNDRIP and the United Nations Declaration on Indigenous Peoples Act, the purpose of the act, and what recommendations and priorities to implement the legislation to ensure all federal laws are consistent with UNDRIP, what elements for inclusion in the federal government's annual report for Parliament should include. Our justice team consists of Faye Pettypiece, who's our administrative coordinator, Stephen Lee, justice policy analyst, and Emily Gowdy and Lily Kindla, who are with us in the room right there. For my presentation, I want to provide some background on the work to date and what we'll be doing on September 15th. Justice Canada launched an engagement process for an action plan to achieve the objectives of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. The engagement is for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis across Canada, and $23.6 million was available. NAN submitted their proposal in March of this year. In April 2022, NAN received approval at a significantly lower amount than what was requested. In order to receive monies to start the work, NAN submitted a revised plan to reflect the amount approved and not the original plan as submitted. For background, since 2010, the NAN Chiefs in Assembly have mandated the NAN Executive Council to pursue funding from Canada and Ontario for the implementation of UNDRIP. NAN Chiefs in Assembly passed Resolutions 1006 and 1065. Resolution 1065 mandates the NAN Executive Council, if feasible, to implement the following measures in support of the declaration. 1, active public support of the declaration, including the organization of an annual think tank or conference on the declaration. 2, establishment of a tripartite table on the declaration on the implementation. 3, participate in UN forums and processes connected with the declaration. 4, support independent First Nation laws and protocols consistent with the rights contained in the declaration. Oppose federal and provincial laws and policies inconsistent with the declaration. 6, an education campaign, including dialogue to ensure that the information on the declaration is available at the community level. And 7, such other measures in support of the declaration as deemed appropriate. Our original plan was imagined to start this conversation, to start providing education on what is UNDRIP and what the federal legislation is, and for NAN leadership to provide their recommendations to the action plan for implementing UNDRIP. The original proposal was clear. Engagement would need to happen with all 49 chiefs of NAN territory as the rights holders, and it would be critical that NAN First Nations were afforded the opportunity to understand what UNDRIP means for individuals and as a collective. The proposal was planned as a 3-day summit for you, the leaders, to discuss, debate, and provide recommendations on the action plan. We would connect, gather feedback with our NAN citizens, our advisory councils, our tribal councils, affiliated organizations, and stakeholders to gather feedback on UNDRIP. The monies we have received to start this work does not reflect the true costs of bringing all of you together or the proposed engagement and outreach we wanted to do. The amount approved does not reflect the realities and costs of an engagement of this magnitude and importance. That being said, we have to start this conversation. I'm grateful for mentors in my time here at NAN, like Helen Cromarty, who said to me, just start the work. It will come together. In May of this year, we learned that NAPS and NAN Legal would be hosting their AGMs, and due to limited funding, we'll be joining our justice partners once again for a 3-day meeting in September. NAPS and NAN Legal, who will be having their AGMs on September 13th and 14th respectively, are contributing to the cost to host this one-day event. I want to thank both of our partners for their generous contributions to allow the NAN engagement on September 15th. Before the engagement, we will be looking at having engagement sessions with our NAN advisory councils prior to the NAN's chief engagement to gather information to be shared for that day. I want to apologize for the quick time frame. However, we want to ensure we can gather as much information as we can for the one-day session for the chiefs. On September 15th, NAN intends to host a one-day engagement to seek the chiefs' input and contribution in identifying their priorities toward the federal government's action plan. Engaging with leadership is paramount, and as you are the treaty and inherent right holders. This will be a hybrid event, and you will have the option to attend in person or virtually. I want to bring your attention to the envelope that was provided at your seats. If we may have missed anybody, please let me know, and I will make sure that you have the information. Inside it is a USB stick that was put together by our students, and they affectionately said it was made with love, and I agree. We're all working very hard to try and make sure that you have this one day. To build knowledge, awareness, and understanding and informed dialogue among NAN citizens, we have gathered information materials for you as well. This information will be shared over our social media channels for education and awareness campaign to educate and inform what is UNDRIP and the UNDRIP Act. Information will be posted on the NAN website that will also direct you to a link on the Justice Canada website to submit your feedback if you prefer to participate online. Lastly, in your package, you will also find the USB stick has a table of contents that will allow you to review materials, have any, and for background information. So I want to say Chimigwech for allowing me to present to you, and Ovid McCurdy will now present. Thank you.
Good morning, umaga. At journalista nga na naman. Misipayos tagu inununi na gutago tigyan. Mga nista giniganin. Because kente na ako naman. You have it now. So I was going to first acknowledge the new mayor of Timmins, Mayor Christian Murray. I wanted to use a quote, but I don't know how appropriate it is for me, but it is for her on what she said. And I did explain to her that I was going to quote her. She said, I may look young, but I'm not young. I just wanted to use that once And I enjoyed your conversation and admired how you came up with a plan of action to deal with nuclear waste. And I wanted to draw your attention to the Declaration of Indigenous Rights, this little booklet that is part of your package. And I want you to look at Article 29. And I'm just going to read it to you. But as you're looking, you'll find that it's a tool that we can use to oppose things that government is planning or to advance things that we are planning with them or without them. So Article 29 reads, Indigenous people have the right to the conservation and protection of the environment and the productive capacity of their lands or territories and resources. States shall establish and implement assistance programs for Indigenous peoples for such conservation and protection without discrimination. 2, states shall take effective measures to ensure that no storage or disposal of hazardous waste materials shall take place in the lands or territories of Indigenous peoples without their free, prior, and informed consent. That's what you were talking about this morning, Chiefs, about how how the country needs to comply with the laws that they've established in their relationship with us. So while I'm on that topic of the laws that they established, there's one in your package. It's a law related to the declaration that was passed by Parliament. And the purpose of that law is to affirm the declaration and also to compel the government of Canada to come up with an implementation plan for the declaration. That's the two stated purposes of the federal law adopting the Declaration of Indigenous Rights. And the important provision that I want to draw your attention to is Article 5, which I'm going to read in its entirety. The government of Canada must, in consultation and cooperation with Indigenous peoples, take all measures necessary to ensure that the laws of Canada are consistent with the Declaration. That the laws of Canada are consistent with the Declaration. That's a very powerful statement and a very strong commitment that the country is taking to comply with the Declaration of Indigenous Rights. And it goes on to say that all departments are responsible for coming up with some kind of an action plan. And in fact, the reason that we are here right now is to let you know that NAN applied for some funding to try to ensure that your communities had direct participation with the development of the action plan that the federal government is contemplating. They're in the process of creating one right now. And the purpose of that action plan reads as follows, that they have to prepare and implement an action plan to achieve the objectives of the Declaration. The objectives of the Declaration. And I had highlighted some of the pertinent provisions about what some of the objectives are in relation to land, for example, to traditional medicine, to our own autonomy as a people. All these things are part of the objectives of the Declaration. And when it comes to the action plan, the legislation that they passed made it very clear that whatever measures they take, they have to address, and I'm going to read this in its entirety, they have to address injustices. They have to combat prejudice and eliminate all forms of violence, racism, and discrimination, including systemic racism and discrimination. against Indigenous people and Indigenous elders, youth, children, women, men, persons with disabilities, and gender diverse persons and two-spirited people. So this is really a command by Parliament to the Government of Canada, not only to comply with the provisions of the Declaration, but to address the injustices we've experienced, as well as to deal with the racism that we encounter. Now, here's where I will have some difficulty. Trying to follow the PowerPoint. But I'm going to give it 100% effort. So when you look at your history about the formation of what is NAN, like the original Treaty 9 organization, that group passed a resolution about what principles would guide their movement, their political movement, to protect the treaty and Aboriginal rights of the Treaty 9 territory. Of course, that's now evolved into NAN, that includes Treaty 5. Now, what is important to remember here is that the UN Declaration is just a tool. It is not the source of our rights. It's not a source of our power. But it's also a minimum standard. I was not directly involved in any of these negotiations that happened with the Declaration, but I know people who were, like Willie Littlechai, for example, and Sharon Venn. And I did attend a few of these sessions on the sideline, not as a primary proponent of our rights with the Declaration. But I am aware that when they were working on these declarations, these principles, there was a lot of opposition from nation states, particularly from the United States and Canada, because they were trying to protect whatever they stole from us, and they didn't want in any way to compromise their sovereignty as a country, what they call their territorial integrity. And so that's why I say that the officials of the Crown, they worked hard to make sure that the wording was not an absolute recognition of our inherent treaty and Aboriginal rights. So that's why I refer to it as a minimum standard. Okay? And this law that they passed to affirm the Declaration is also not the source of our rights. But you'll have to wonder, though, why they didn't consider passing legislation about our treaties, to affirm our treaties, to say these are your rights under treaty. But they have set a precedent, nonetheless, by recognizing the Declaration, which makes reference not just to autonomy and land and so forth, but also to cultural property and Indigenous beliefs and spirituality and all that. That's all part of the Declaration. Yeah. Now, I think a good stand, I'm going to try to go through the PowerPoint. Is that where I start? Okay, alignment. As I mentioned to you earlier, NAN, Treaty 9, had a declaration in 1977. And their declaration about Indigenous people, about our freedom and equality, referred to a similar provision in a declaration. So they had a vision already about protecting their right to self-government and self-determination, about the importance of our people having the capacity to create their own institutions of government, including social, economic, and cultural bodies to advance our rights and freedoms. And that the provision, even in the NAN Declaration, referred to this idea of fair and equitable compensation for our lands and resources, which is an issue that Chief Corson is going to be dealing with, about the importance of ensuring that the lands taken and occupied, used are not damaged, but that if they are, that there be compensation that flows from that. This was a declaration from the NAN organization at that time in 1997, but that same provision you'll find in the Declaration of Indigenous Rights. So there is an alignment between what your predecessors thought your rights were, and also in more recent times, and you heard the youth talk the other day, they also identified the right to life, the right to physical and mental integrity, liberty and security, and all these. These are all also in line with the Declaration, like the rights to improvements in education, employment, training, housing, all that, the right to social health services, the right to land steward, all that is in line with the Declaration. That the youth themselves have already identified these as to be the basic principles for any advocacy by the youth with respect to your treaty and Aboriginal rights. So there is already a synergy, you see, between the declarations we have made or you have made and what the Declaration says. So I suppose we could argue that by adopting the Declaration as Canada did, they did also vicariously adopted all these resolutions. At least politically, we can make that claim and say, yes, you have accepted our assertion of the nature and scope of our freedoms and our rights. Okay, next slide. Did you like that? Okay, here it is. I think I did that. Yeah, I did. All right, so what's the next one? Oh yeah, this is the what the government of Canada is hoping to achieve. So the engagement process that they established is nationwide, and it includes First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, and it has to do with this idea of asking First Nations and the other Indigenous groups to tell the government of Canada what their hopes and expectations are with respect to the action plan that the federal government is going to come up with. So we're actually in phase one of that now. And the fact that NAN did not receive all the funding that they asked for, the potential for full engagement of the communities is not possible at this time. And your Deputy Grand Chief has already advocated for more resources with the ministers. And no new money is coming. So that's why we have to piggyback with an existing conference that was reported to, and we're hoping that the chiefs will come in mass to come to that gathering, so that they can have their voice heard, and that we can convey that through NAN to the federal government as to what our expectations are about their action plan. And then the phase two, and I think there will be some further funding with that, will be the idea of validating the action plan. In other words, further consultations with respect to the intentions of the federal government, their intentions, and how to implement the declaration. So their timeline right now is limited. When they pass the legislation, they had to achieve all this within a 2-year period, and the deadline for them is next fall. So you can see that we don't really have that much opportunity for a full exercise of consultation and engagement. The other thing that we are aware of is that all the ministers have received direction from the Prime Minister to make this one of their priorities, and that each department within Canada, the Government of Canada, the federal ministries, have a role with respect to the implementation of the Act. And now you can see the next slide is about what the government says they're doing. I'm not even going to bother reading about that. You can look at it yourselves. I'm not here to promote their propaganda, but these are the things that they claim they're currently doing right now with respect to trying to recognize our rights as a people. And we know how deficient that can be. So in conclusion, this measure is only with the federal government. Absent are the provinces. Now, the measures, the action plan that the federal government will take is probably going to be limited to their jurisdiction, because they're always so careful not to interfere with provincial authority and jurisdiction in terms of the powers that the provinces have. But as you can see, that the declaration does not distinguish between the federal government and the province, and that by adopting the declaration, it should be binding on the entire country, including the provinces. And the only province that has responded in kind is in British Columbia, where they have adopted a provincial measure to affirm and adopt a declaration, as well as to create a process of engagement and partnerships with the First Nations in British Columbia. So that's possibly something that may happen in Ontario, but it will not happen without advocacy from NAN and other political bodies within Ontario. So I conclude my presentation by just referring to you one more time to Article 5 of the federal law that adopts the declaration. The article that says that Canadian laws have to be consistent with the declaration. And one of the provisions in the declaration I'm going to read to you is about treaties. And it says, Indigenous people have the right to the recognition, observance, and enforcement of treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements concluded with the states or their successors, and to have the states honor and respect such treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements. So the tool is a declaration. The tool for us is to look at all their legislation, like the Fisheries Act, to make sure it complies with the treaty. To look at the environmental legislation to make sure that's in compliance with the treaty. So that's just to give an example of how we can use the declaration to do what they said they want to do, which is to amend their laws in consultation with us, so that those laws are consistent with the declaration. Now, when it comes to land, I'm just going to read one provision, which is Article 27. The states shall establish and implement, in conjunction with Indigenous people concerned, a fair, independent, impartial, open, and transparent process, giving due recognition to Indigenous peoples' laws, traditions, customs, and land tenure systems, to recognize and adjudicate these rights of Indigenous people pertaining to their lands, treaties, and resources, including those which were traditionally owned or otherwise occupied or used. Indigenous people shall have the right to participate in the process. It doesn't say that their judicial system is the right process where our rights should be adjudicated. No. It's talking about something that has never been tried in this country. And the example I'm going to give you is the Treaty of Waitangi in New Zealand, which is a treaty that binds that country in its relationship with the Indigenous people there. So when it came to any conflict about the interpretation of that treaty, in terms of the nature and scope of the rights contained therein, they established a tribunal, the Waitangi Tribunal. It's a tribunal jointly established by the state and the Maori people with equal representation on a panel of adjudicators, and that the hearings of that panel are conducted in the English and the Maori language. We don't have that kind of existing mechanisms between us and the country for a fair and transparent process. So we have, I think, won a few cases in the courts, but it's not our courts, it's their courts. So it's not absolutely fair and transparent. And what this calls for is that the states to implement with Indigenous people fair, independent, impartial, open, and transparent processes to deal with any disputes concerning land. And yesterday, you guys talked about housing, about health, and about the issues our people are dealing, like the social problems that are plaguing every nation across the country with drug abuse and so forth. And there is a provision in the convention, Article 24, that says Indigenous people have the right to their traditional medicines and to maintain their health practices, including the conservation of their vital medicinal plants, animals, and minerals. Indigenous individuals also have the right to access, without any discrimination, any social and health services that exist in the country, right? And Article 21 is even more specific. It says Indigenous people have the right, without discrimination, to the improvement of their economic and social conditions, including, among other things, in the areas of education, employment, vocational training, retraining, housing, sanitation, health, and social security. So the Declaration is a tool. It's not a source of our rights, but it's a tool that we can use to compel the Canadian government and the Ontario government to be more responsive and to be our true partners as intended by the treaty, to make sure that our people are well and that they're treated fairly in the country, right? So I hope I made it very clear to you that the source of our rights predate Canada. They predate the Constitution of the country. They predate the Declaration of Indigenous Rights. Our rights are pre-existing rights. And the Declaration, as I said, is a minimum standard, but an important tool nonetheless, but it's not the full answer to ensuring that our treaty and Aboriginal rights, our Indigenous rights, are front and center, I guess, of the way the country works in the future. That's what we've been trying all these years. Naskamit now, and you know.
Miigwech, thank you very much for the presentation with Ovid Mercady, introduced by Deputy Grand Chief Jnibeneskam, as well as Natalie Bingus. Are there any comments on the presentation? If there are any comments or questions regarding what you've just heard. I know we've got a full agenda, we've got a lot of items still to get through, but some really good information there that we've just received. Okay, so with that, thank you very much, Miigwech, for the presentation. I do see Saul. I'll get Saul to come up just to do a quick hello. Our MPP from the Keewaywin riding is here, and I know there was some discussion this morning that we do have a representative that will advocate on behalf of NAN First Nations. So I know Saul is leaving at lunch, so I wanted to give him a minute to address the assembly. So, miigwech with that, Saul Mamakwe. Put you on the spot like that.
Manigishibaya, it's a good morning. Mawich Namalandan, Awab Naguk, Nishyake, Kegad Oshmagaki, Ekagao Drapmantek. It's good to see everyone here. It's been a long 2.5 years of not getting together in person. Last 4 years have been an experience for me in becoming an MPP. The next 4 years will be an experience as well. Today, this week, we started our new legislature. Right now, I was just listening to some of the question period that are happening today. I had decided that I would come and pop in on your meeting just to see, hear some of the issues that we face as First Nations. Being at the provincial legislature, it has given me an opportunity to see racism. It's given me an opportunity to see oppression, colonialism in action. I say that because when we live in those conditions on a daily basis, it becomes normalized. We become to accept it as normal. Colonialism, oppression has become a way of life for our people. The perpetual crisis that we see, the needless deaths, the unnecessary suffering that happens is the result of the continued oppression that we see. We get these programs and services that perpetuate crisis. It makes them look like as if they're doing something without really doing anything. Yesterday afternoon, I was sitting at this throne speech, listening to the throne speech. You know, the speech outlined the priorities of the government. But I can say this much, that there was a lot that we did not hear that I think are important. You know, when we talk about throughout Ontario, the healthcare crisis that's happening, the shortage of staff and ER closures that happen. You know, when we talk about curriculum, when we talk about reconciliation, the issue of the science curriculum, this government, you know, the ministry, education ministry staff, they were directed to remove parts of the overarching theme that would have given students instruction on connection between Indigenous and Western science and the provincial science curriculum. There was no talk about the searches for our children. There was no talk about, you know, finding our ancestors that never came home. The ongoing searches in our territories in Ontario. First Nations partners was once mentioned in the throne speech. And I think I listened intently this morning about the issue of nuclear waste. And as a member of provincial parliament, you know, it gives me some ammunition, a lot of ammunition, on where we move forward with the environment, the climate change that we see in our First Nations, in the First Nations that we live in, the traditional territories that we live in. And I think I'm here to support the resolution in any way that I can, whether it's holding press conferences, a press conference at the provincial legislature. There's ways we can work together because we serve the same people. We represent the rights of our people. And I know that sometimes I talk about programs and services. Programs and services is only incremental change. And I think it's time that, again, about Indigenous rights, land rights, treaty rights, it's time that we assert them as peoples. So again, I'd like to say, I'm only here for the part of this morning and part of the afternoon, but it's great to see everyone. And I know that at the new legislature, that the new sitting that we're doing, it is a 43rd sitting, and so we're going to be there for the next 4 or 5 weeks. Typically we're off, so it's an honor to be able to serve the people of Keewaywin, but not only that, be a voice for First Nations people in Ontario. And maad me dan ewab na kuma maad maskaw ziwin, maskaw gabawin, pasigwiwin, mi mo eon naman. Kawa mago ang sinuwag. May mo eon naman kawa mago hag skadasak kog chikog chehag. May mo mawa jisig pantindumamo gaboy. There was there was a declaration that I was reading over this morning. When I got up was the Declaration of Nationhood from the Snabaski Nation from 1977. I think it's the time we start asserting nationhood. It's a time to assert our rights and our territories.
Miigwech Saw, it's always good to know that he's where he hears you and he carries that forth for you. So I think this morning when we introduced the mayor now of Timmins, it is important to stand with her and give that spirit God me doing so that she can carry on the strength to do the work that she's been given by the Creator. So we'd like to call her up to stand by the drum and to do that honor song. And now that her chief is here, we want to stand with her. We're really proud of her, and we want to give her that that honor through a song, as it is in our way to honor each other. Ahasa. Yeah, I did one. Yeah, Chief Keeter is going to stand with her. So if we can all stand for the honor song.
Should we go in animated? I'll follow animated lead.
If anyone wants to go and stand with her. May the ancestors' teachings and the Creator carry you in your new world. So I'm going to give it to the co-chair now.
Miigwech, thank you very much. And we will continue with our agenda. If you are watching online, just a note, we'd had the special honor song for the mayor of Timmins. And she did indicate this morning that as of last night, she is the mayor of Timmins, the first Indigenous mayor for Timmins, and is a member of Chapleau Cree First Nation. So with that, miigwech, thank you very much, everybody. We will continue on. Miigwech. So I know it is 12 o'clock, but we have a packed agenda today, right until the NAN Keewaywin Awards presentation, the special presentations tonight. So we do have a packed agenda all day, well into tonight. A lot of work, a lot of discussions to be had. So we're going to continue on to the next agenda item once we conclude that, and then we will take a short break for lunch, and then we'll continue on with this afternoon's agenda. Now, the next agenda item, it is on the agenda. It's the cumulative impact case against Treaty 9. Now, this agenda item will be in camera.